Hello and welcome to our podcast at Get Legally Speaking, International Women's Day, Inspirational Women. This is a special bonus episode for International Women's Day where I, your host, Hatti Suvari, will be speaking to some of the most inspirational female barristers at the bar to give you a close insight into their inspirational stories. I'll be joined by Sarah Cooper, Maria Scotland, Rachael Goodall and Emma Waldron for some of the best female barristers in the business. We're going to start off by welcoming senior barrister and part-time judge Sarah Cooper from Thomas More Chambers in London. As well as being a highly experienced family law barrister, Sarah is also a part-time judge and she specialises in complex international family cases. Sarah, thank you so much for joining our show today.
Absolute pleasure to be talking to you from court, Hatti.
I know. It's lovely because we're on screen, obviously, due to the pandemic, but I can see the big crown behind Sarah. And I just told her, actually, that she's one of the most glamorous judges I've ever seen. And I mean that. The hair's on point, the lipstick's on point. It's all looking great. So, International Women's Day is a global celebration of the social, economic, cultural and political achievements of women. Actually, it is now an official holiday in at least 20 countries and it is celebrated in over 60. But let's talk about you, Sarah. So tell us, why did you want to become a barrister?
Well, I think the truth of the matter is I was conditioned into it because both of my parents were lawyers. So possibly it was all I ever knew. I was also very keen at an early age, this is rather embarrassing to admit, on being a judge. So it seemed like a natural progression and we're a very argumentative family. So it seemed like the right thing to do somehow.
Well, being an argumentative family, you must have always come on top, Sarah, and thought, yes, I'll be an excellent judge.
Not necessarily, yes. Dinner times were never quiet.
Okay, so what has been the biggest challenge for you that you've faced along the way, would you say?
Well, I would say that professionally, having caring responsibilities in addition to doing your job is probably the biggest challenge. A bit like you, Hatti, not only have I had childcare responsibilities, but I've also, as I know you have, had caring responsibilities in relation to an ill spouse.
Yes.
Now, that really does test the mettle because, of course, what one wants to do is just get on with the job, not only to prove oneself professionally, but also to a certain extent, it can act as an oasis of calm and somewhere to get away from difficulties and challenges that there might be at home. And I feel that it's very important for everyone, whatever gender they may be or none, to have somewhere where they can get away from their personal problems.
Yes.
And actually, sometimes one's work can be that place.
Yes, certainly is for me. There you go.
Yes.
I'm one of those. And what's been your biggest achievement, would you say, to date, Sarah?
I would say what I'm most proud of professionally is being a part-time judge. I very much enjoy it. And it was something I was looking forward to applying for and seeing if that was something that I could achieve. So, yes, I would say that's probably my biggest achievement to date professionally.
And it is a great achievement. It really is. And I have to say this, and you are so well suited to sit up there. And I just said to Sarah before we pressed record, if I'm ever in front of you with a client, when I see your name on the paper, my knees will start to shudder as soon as I see Sarah Cooper judging that case, because let me tell you, she takes no prisoners, which is great. So let's talk about the one thing, if you could change one thing to accelerate gender equality in the legal profession, what would that be? What would you say that should be or could be?
I would say that it's about people's assumptions of at what point in people's careers they should have peaked. The reality is that for men who tend not to have the primary responsibility for children, they are able to peak professionally in their early 40s. And that is the point when people are applying for silk or they are applying to sit as judges. Actually, for many women, early 40s is too early because they may have taken time off to look after their children, etc., etc. So I would want, it's really a mind shift in relation to the age at which people should be expected to be applying for some of the stepping stones along the way within our profession. That's what I would look for.
No,
particularly as we're all going to live a long time.
Yes.
So there's really no need for there to be an assumption that you should have peaked professionally at 42.
No, I hear you.
You've got years ahead of you.
No, I certainly hear you. I do hear you. Now let's talk about the one piece of advice to young women looking to study to become a barrister. What would that be from you, Sarah?
Never be afraid.
Ha! Fearless.
Fearless.
All right, so never be afraid of what?
Anything. Don't be afraid. Just get on with it.
Do you think that
you're no better, no worse than anyone else? Just put your head down, take a deep breath, get on with it.
Do your homework, study, work for it. And I mean, do you think that being a female in the profession does have its challenges, rather than being a man in the profession? I know you just mentioned what you'd change in terms of the gender equality point, but do you think you've had a few more challenges because you're a woman?
Possibly you don't get taken as seriously at times, but I'm not necessarily sure that that's a disadvantage. I mean, I can recollect some clear examples where I was underestimated for particularly being a young woman, and actually in those cases actually came to bite the other side on the bottom.
Oh,
so
lovely.
I think that it can be an advantage being underestimated. It can lead people into, a sense
a bit of trouble. Yes, indeed. Well, Sarah, thank you so much for joining me today. I am so pleased to have had you on this episode. And now you can go off and judge and slice and dice whoever's there for you today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sarah. Have a good day.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
And our next guest to join us today is going to be Maria Scotland from 5 St Andrews Hill Chambers in London. Maria is joint head of the family team in her chambers, and she is a leading family law barrister who has won an award for her work from the Bar Council. Maria, welcome to our show. You're glowing today.
Good morning.
Do you know
I've
what?
had a morning of tech failures this morning.
Oh no, don't work. Tech failures and me don't work. But you're looking very healthy as always.
Yes, thank you.
May I say? I you know what? We have to start recording these things visually because honestly, some of the barristers, they're stunning that I work with, and you're one of those age-defying women, even if I must say so myself.
Thank you.
Inspirational Women's Day today, Maria, and I'm so pleased to be talking to you. And actually, one of the most important days of the year to celebrate women and their achievements. And this day goes back over a century to the first gathering that was held in Copenhagen in Denmark in 1911. But let's talk about you.
Yes.
So tell us, why did you want to become a barrister, Maria?
Oh, do you know
Spill
what?
it all. Give us all
I
the details.
I actually didn't want to become a barrister.
Oh.
I stumbled into it, which, I know it sounds ridiculous. Because
Stumbled into a profession that you have to work so hard to...
And it's such a hard profession to get into. But I left school, went straight to university, and I did engineering. And I was sponsored to do my degree by a consortium who were looking for the future engineers who would develop new fibres. So I was sponsored by British Aerospace, Courtauld, etc. And I ended up being a research scientist.
Oh my God!
Yeah, so that was my first job. I did that for about 3.5 years. But it was a job where I was in a lab all day, every day, or in a small office, no windows, because there was threats of spy and stuff and conspiracy. And I hated my job and I wanted to move into something else. And I was so specialist that I thought I'll do the law conversion just because it'll give me something else on my CV. And then after that, I thought, where do I go from here? And it was my dad, the one day before you had to tick the box to say you were going to do the bar course, or you're going to do the solicitor's route. And I thought, well, I'm never going to end up a barrister because that's far too intelligent. You've got to be really intelligent. And my dad called me and said to me, typical of you, taking the lazy route. So I thought, right.
Oh, gosh. He put the challenge on you.
And I actually, every step of the way, and it is a long process, actually, every step of the way, I thought, I'll just do this a bit more. So I've got a bit more on my CV. And then before I knew it, I ended up where I was looking for pupillage. And, I'm so glad because it's a career that suits my personality. Not having sort of fly by the seat of your pants and doing loads of work, not doing the 9 to 5. So I'm glad I did it. I'm glad for my dad, actually.
Oh, wow. Well, there you go. He basically said to you, actually, my dad did that to me with my driving test. My dad taught me how to drive. I didn't have one driving lesson. And I remember him saying, you're not going to pass your test first time. And I thought, what? What did you just say? And I did. I was 17 and a day and I passed my test first time. So there you go. I know the place of fathers putting that onto daughters, ambitious daughters. So tell us, what has been your biggest challenge that you faced along the way?
The biggest challenge was being a single mum, having 2 really, really small children. My daughters were 18 months and 2.5.
Wow.
I know, I've got Irish twins, they're 11 months apart, which was non-accidental. But I'm so blessed because I wouldn't have had children any other way. I wouldn't have had children before marriage, and I haven't had an opportunity to have children since. But I had 2 really young babies and a huge house with an enormous mortgage. My husband had given up his job, and so I was the main breadwinner. And being a barrister, you have to keep working. You have to keep doing the cases, otherwise you don't earn. I ended up paying him maintenance, and I had them to look after. That was a challenge.
My chin's just almost hit my desk. I know you've seen that, but the listeners can't. God.
Yeah, and back in those days, the way that things are.
Don't say back in those days because you're not old, okay? And your children are not old. How old are they now?
Where we are now is celebrating women and celebrating all the things that we have to do as women, which are different, or maybe similar, but slightly different, like being a mum, raising your children, etc.
It always falls on your shoulders. I've said this a lot of times, and I'm just going to let it lay there. It does fall on the shoulders of a woman in terms of the house, in terms of what's everyone eating, when's bedtime, has all the homework been done, has all the birthday party arrangements been made? Have they got the present for the parties that they're going to? And that's all of that, the cleaning, all of that. And I get it. I know that lots of men share those duties, but majority of the time it does fall on the shoulders of a woman. And to actually practice as a barrister when you've got 2 children under the age of 3 is a miracle. It's so inspirational, Maria, because it's hard work.
I felt I couldn't tell people that I was struggling because otherwise they wouldn't instruct me. They'd be very, they'd be sympathetic, but then think, we can't rely on her. So I had to pretend all was fine at home. And that was a real juggling match. But I literally just looked after my girls, went to work, slept. I had no social life for years and years and years. And I now feel that that's one of my best achievements because they're now growing into women.
How old are they now, Maria?
They're 15, 16 in the next month.
Oh, my God.
Do you know what? I've done okay, actually.
Well, good for you, honestly.
So, yeah, that's a big struggle. And it's a big struggle for a lot of women that come to the bar, I think.
It is. Yeah. And when I'm often asked in the legal profession, what could be done to assist women in the legal profession? And the first thing I say, it's simple, it's childcare. Provide the childcare. If there's so many barristers, good barristers that I work with that actually have to put their careers on complete hold, or like you say, they kind of say, is it okay for me to take this instruction? I am working from home, and I know we're going through a pandemic now, so everybody is, but I'm talking normal times over the last decade of running Red Bar Law. Is it okay if I take it? I will be working from home. And I just absolutely Don't worry about it. And in 10 years, Maria, I've never had a female barrister who's had to work from home due to childcare and work, trying to balance that work-life issue, not produce the work, not deliver the work, or not do it to the standard. They've actually been fantastic. And I'm a big champion of giving work to young mums. Even now with Get Legally Speaking, we've got members of our team who've got young children. And I say, sorry, but my little one was unwell this morning. I'll get this finished by the afternoon. No problem. I get it.
See, that's why I love you so much, because that hasn't been the case. And then one of the reasons I think is that a lot of solicitors themselves, when they get to the stage where they've got childcare, they've got home issues, they take a back step from their career. Yeah. I think we have to. Most people have had to, and that's why I say back then. And now, and to be honest with you, the pandemic may well have been a blessing for a lot of people who are disadvantaged or are mums and unable to do the workload where you're going to court and you've got children.
Or so you have to turn up to chambers. Yeah. No.
And proven it can be done.
I get it. And I've actually said that. I've said that hopefully what it's proven to most employers and in the legal profession, chambers, when we're talking about barristers, is that people can do their work if they're given the work to do in their own environment and manage their own environment if they're organised. It can be done. And I find that amazing. So let's talk about what's been your biggest challenge in terms of the actual job itself, where you've been juggling childcare, you've been juggling, a career from your earlier on. What's been your biggest challenge in terms of your gender? So being a woman at the bar, what do you think, and have you faced any challenges that you...
You know what, the recent movement, Black Lives Matter, has made everybody stop and think not just about our colour, but our gender and who we are. And it's made us look at our workplace. And I have then realised what I think has been a challenge is getting to a certain level in my career. And then the natural progression would be somewhere to take silk or to do...
You're the head of the family team at a fantastic set of chambers in London,
That is true.
Are you running for Prime Minister, Maria, or where are we going? Let me just get a feel for this now.
I think, I suddenly realised there are a lot of men, white middle class men with the suits, who are holding the doors. And they're holding the doors closed at the upper levels. And I think that is a challenge. It's a chance to think, have I reached a glass ceiling? Can I go above it? And finding that it's a sticking point. So that's been a challenge in the last couple of years. I've found that I feel stuck almost in my career, and I feel that I'm not doing as well as I could do.
No, but, you've got to shake that. Maria, let me tell you, you've got to shake that off. You've got to shake that off, because you have got the miles, the years, the wisdom, the intelligence, and certainly the experience to be able to go to silk if that's where you want to go. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there's just no doubt about it. I work with Maria as a barrister on cases in Red Bar Law, and she slices and dices, no nonsense, excellent, high level quality work. And I say that from demanding and commanding clients that we're trying to do the work for and manage the expectations for. So absolutely. So okay, let's talk about your one piece of advice for a young woman looking to study and become a barrister.
I would say be yourself. I remember back in the early days when I thought about taking elocution lessons, and I really watched what I had a black woman with afro hair, but I straightened my hair, and I sort of presented myself the way I thought a barrister should. And I think you should have permission to be yourself now. I think there's more women also embracing and accepting other women coming through. There are more women now.
Yes,
so there's
definitely
want to be. So that would be my biggest piece of advice. Don't try and look and think how a barrister should be. Be yourself, because that also, personality is a big thing at the bar. You have to be academic.
Definitely. And I have to say, some of the pale, stale and male men don't have a personality, and I'll say that myself. There you go. Boom. Just said it. I've instructed over 100 barristers, I have to say, many more than 100. And it's interesting because I am instructing more and more women as time's going on, because more and more women are putting themselves forward with a personality in the case, not just, right, let's deliver the legal knowledge on this case and get the, and I am finding that, and it's nice. It's really, really nice.
Yeah, we're dealing with people's lives.
Absolutely.
Personality is huge. We really need to assist people with the emotions of going through a court case, not just the legality of going through the court case. So be yourself and let yourself shine, but also know that there are struggles, and it isn't just the struggle, the usual getting past the exam. There are struggles when it comes to being a mum, being a carer of somebody. And I would say reach out to other women in the profession who may stretch their
so no cat fighting at the bar then? A little bit. Maria, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on, and I wish you a pleasant afternoon. Speak to you soon. Thank you. I am now going to be joined by another excellent barrister and part-time judge, Rachael Goodall from Three Paper Buildings Chambers in London. Rachael specialises in family and financial remedy cases, and she's one of the few barristers who is consistently recommended in both of the leading directories, Chambers and Partners and the Legal 500. Rachael, it is a pleasure to have you join me today.
Hatti, the pleasure is all mine, I can assure you.
Well, I tell you, you're glammed up and you're looking so good.
Always glammed up for you, Hatti.
Oh, Rachael, bless your heart. So, International Women's Day, we've just spoken to two lovely ladies, lovely barristers, and I wouldn't have done this podcast without you. Let me just tell you that, because having, through Red Bar Law, seen your work firsthand, it is of A grade, and I know that you've got young children as well, and I know that life can be challenging and tough with juggling it all, but you work flat out and you work some excellent level of work. I'm just going to tell you that. There you go, delivered it. So tell us.
How to make someone feel good, thank you.
No, it's the truth. It's the absolute truth. I remember emailing you saying, Rachael, when are you available? Because I am going to do this podcast around you. I think you are an inspirational woman, and I think that lots of my listeners will enjoy listening to why and how and who you are and getting a little bit of an insight. So tell us why you wanted to become a barrister.
Well, Hatti, I'm a bit of a frustrated actor, I think. I'm sure lots of barristers could say the same. I was 14 and my mum was working at the time with helping witnesses at court called witness support, criminal cases, just making them a cup of tea and reassuring them about the court process. And I went along with her one day because she said, oh, I'm in Winchester. There's a really interesting case going on. Come and have a look. And Hatti, from that moment, I remember peering down from the public gallery and watching the barristers, and I was just absolutely mesmerised. So I thought, that's the job for me.
Wow. And so you were pretty decided from a young age. You thought, I like that. What did you like? Did you like the way they commanded the court and, their knowledge and expertise and the whole deliverance? Because it is, the courtroom, I find it a special place. It's got nostalgia, it's got awe. I love being in a courtroom. I really do. Is that what kind of attracted you?
Well, yes, I didn't really understand what was going on in the case. Probably a mixture of just being young and a bit naive, but I was watching it midpoint through the trial. And it's very grand in Winchester. The courtrooms are huge, really old fashioned, beautiful, sort of inside all wooden. And I like the fact that everyone was sort of watching the barrister and listening to the barrister speak. And I've always enjoyed since then public speaking. So I suppose, it's just having an audience. I mean, that's probably a bit of a show off. I don't know.
No, it's not. It's not. Because it's often been said, and I couldn't agree more, that barristers just can't wing it. Okay, you just can't say, well, do you know what? I'll read a couple of the papers and turn up and I'll just wing this off. It's not going to happen. You need to know your stuff. A good barrister that delivers really well and does really justifies their work for their client, has done their homework and has really put their hours and time into knowing their case and their pages and line by line, as I say it. And I see that. I've seen barristers turn up and I know when they haven't done their homework, and I know when, sadly, I find that most of the time it's when their client has only just been introduced to them. Yes. Rather than it being the barrister not having done the job properly. Usually they've just been introduced the night before, and they haven't had enough time to prep. So yeah, you know, it's a job that when it's delivered well, it's done well. So tell us, what has been your biggest challenge that you've faced along the way, Rachel?
Hattie, you know, that's a really good question, and I've tried to rack my brains. I've been a barrister for over 20 years now. And
you don't look old enough to say that. I told you that before.
Come back more often,
Every time you say that, I'm thinking these Zoom screens, I swear they just put auto filters to make me look.
No, I mean, you know, it's goodness. Yeah, the filter's on, darling. You know, the biggest challenge, I think, and it's difficult because 20 years is a long time, but I think the biggest challenge is actually remote working and homeschooling. I've got two boys who are 9 and 6, and it's been a real challenge. And I've tried to think, are there any other things? And I'm sure when I was younger, things may have seemed tougher at the time. But at times through this pandemic, I felt that I'm clinging on with my fingernails. I'm going to be honest.
Yeah, no, I get it. But Rachel, it's you, and literally there's 2.2 million children, I think the figures were, being homeschooled. And I think it's you and a lot of other people as well, whether they're working from home or whether they're just stuck at home because of the lockdown situation. But in terms of working a work-life balance as a barrister, when we weren't in the pandemic and, you know, the children went off to school, did you find working from home was something that actually was a benefit to your career? That if you could, you know, being able to do that?
The job is fantastic because you, apart from being in court and obviously having to travel to court, you can do the work when you want and how you want. So I have liked the independence of, if I finished in court early, of just being able to go home, pop the slippers on, nice cup of tea, or go for a run, or do things actually when other people are working. The downside is the sort of Sunday night homework club and maybe working when your friends and your family are wanting to do things. But for me, actually, it's been a real benefit over the years. I've loved that aspect.
Yes, I have to say, because obviously as a barrister, we've discussed this in our other podcasts, you're self-employed, but you belong to a set of chambers and you practice. So you can say, yes, I'll take that case, thank you very much. I'd like to fit that into my diary. Or actually, no, I can't take that case on. I'm blocking my diary out for a few days or the afternoon or the morning, etc. So there, it does have that great benefit to it. So tell us, what has been your biggest achievement to date, Rachel?
Probably when I was appointed a fee-paid judge. So I slot that in alongside my practice.
I like the way you say you slot that in. I mean, it is hard work. It takes a lot of time. And, you know, it's amazing that you're a part-time judge as well as a barrister. It really is. With 2 kids that you're homeschooling at the moment, I will add.
But it's important, isn't it, that judges are representative of society. And I thoroughly enjoy my role because it's completely different seeing both sides and making a decision rather than just arguing one side. So over my career, yes, that's what I would say, hands down.
And it obviously gives you a great insight as well, doesn't it, Rachel? I mean, obviously practicing as a barrister gives you an insight because sometimes you're for and sometimes you're against in cases and you have to prepare those sorts of arguments. But actually judging a case, has it enabled you to have an additional perspective to where you were when you were only practicing as a barrister, do you think? Do you think it's added positively to your role?
Yes, I do. In terms of the advice I give clients and how I think that will come across to a judge, and the way in terms of my written documents, I structure them differently, I think, in terms of, well, what information does a judge need rather than what would my client like me to argue? Sometimes that can be difficult for clients to appreciate. Maybe you don't run certain, you know, arguments or make certain points. But I always try to put myself in the judge's position. And of course, when you are in the judge's position, and you've got experience of that really helps.
No, absolutely. I mean, a good solicitor many, many years ago when I first established Red Bar Law once said to me, always write your letters for the eyes of a judge. So even if you're not in court, even if the matter hasn't been issued yet and it's got contentious, always write your letters to think, what would a judge think if they're reading this letter? And I think that was one of the best pieces of advice as a non-lawyer myself that I was ever told.
I also, thinking about that, I think that's great advice. But a friend of mine who's got 3 children, I remember when my kids were very young and, you know, just the learning how to discipline them. So it's slightly off topic, but I remember him saying, parent your children and discipline them like there's a camera watching you. So it's a similar sort of thing, isn't it? Don't do anything that you wouldn't want people to do.
Yes.
And sometimes I'm reminded of that when I'm shouting at them or something, and I think, oh, if there was a camera here, would I do that? So
that's quite that is interesting, actually. I have to say, I don't think there is a parent on the land which doesn't sometimes or hasn't questioned their parenting style and abilities. It's just life, isn't it? We're only human. You know, the last 12 months has brought about an unprecedented, I mean, we couldn't have even dreamed a pandemic of this kind. And yet everybody's just soldiering on the best way they can. So to be sort of, you know, you're caught off guard, you're caught sometimes upset, angry with young ones just doing what they do in the way that they do. And you know, you've mentioned you've got 2 young children, but how have you juggled childcare and working as a barrister even before the pandemic? Did you find that a challenge? What was the formula that worked for you, you know, when the children were younger? And as I said, before homeschooling was part of our lives.
Well, I think whether you have children or not, we've all got struggles, haven't we? People who don't have children are maybe feeling isolated, you know, not being able to see friends, support network, mental health issues. But I would say that the piece of advice that's kept me at the bar for as long as I've been here is strict diary management and learning to say no. It's really hard.
Learning to say no to who? Your husband or the family or clients? Or really, a little bit of everything? Could be.
I think you've got to work out what your priorities are. And it's okay. And you've got to give yourself permission to say no. You don't have to please everyone all the time. And sometimes it's better to say to a friend or maybe a work colleague or a solicitor if something's due, I'm really sorry, I can't do that right now. This is when I can do it. Or not even need to apologise for it, just being strict about what you can and can't do. Otherwise, you'll just end up letting people down. Yeah. And that's the thing that's got me through, actually.
Well, that's actually really key. And I think, you know, I have to say, I do try and live by that, Rachel. It is really hard sometimes to say no. And it is easy, I think, to get roped in, isn't it, to certain situations, whether it's a family thing or whether it's your friends or whether it's, you know, the kids just taking you off on a tangent somewhere because of something's just happened unexpectedly. But it is really important to be super organised. And I was just, you know, discussing this earlier, that as women, you ultimately carry the responsibility of your home. You know, who's eating what? Has everybody done their homework? You know, the uniform's cleaned. Is the house clean? Is the dinner been done? And it goes on and on and on and on. So, you know, to do that and to work in the legal sector in the way that barristers have to work and that the legal sector commands, it's pretty tough. And I think if you're disorganised, that's just a no-no. Being super organised is a key. And, you know, I really resonate with that. I get it. Completely get it. Right. Let's talk about if you can change one thing to accelerate gender equality in the legal profession. What would that be?
Well, in terms of barristers in particular, my one thing that I'd like to change is to improve the retention of women barristers, because what happens is a lot leave in their 30s because they decide to start a family and they just find it's really tough and they just go and they don't come back. And that's something that I'm working on in conjunction with the Bar Council, and also in the area that I practice in the Western Circuit, in the Women's Forum. That's one of our big aims, to help people become silks and judges, help them with the process, but also help them remain. Because if women go, and it does happen with solicitors as well, but less so, but if barristers go, we're not going to have senior barristers to then become top judges, silks and judges, silks, are we?
Yeah, no, exactly.
So that's where we've got to, and actually we probably need to get them early to say, look, things are going to be tough, but just hang on in there. And I think the more senior women who are around who can help and say, well, this is what I did, this is what I would recommend.
Share their experiences, absolutely, and provide the support.
Exactly. So I think that would be one thing that would really, really help. The numbers are improving, but we've still got a long way to go.
No, I agree. And actually, I've often found myself, and I did say this earlier on in this podcast, I've often found myself saying that what could be the one thing that could help women in the profession at the bar, and I just say one word: childcare. childcare. If the government was to say, right, let's make childcare accessible and affordable and plenty of it, I think you would find a far higher retention of barristers at the bar, and you would find that women are far more happier to say, oh, there is childcare available, even if it's some core hours, you know, segregated to the first half of the day or the last part of the day or whatever it may be. I think it would make a massive difference.
I agree.
I think that, you know, perhaps having, you know, childcare facilities near chambers. So if people say, right, okay, I'll travel in with my little one and make sure there's childcare available there while I go and do my day in chambers and come back. Or, you know, make sure that there's more childcare facilities that are accessible for younger children and that's affordable. Childcare costs a fortune, Rachel. A fortune.
Yes, it does.
And what I do find most, you know, families saying is, well, actually, it's not worth me really working because I will, you know, 80% of my salary will be going to paying childcare. So is it really worth it? But yeah, I totally get it. Okay, so what would be your one piece of advice to young women looking to study to become a barrister, Rachel?
Well, there's lots of advice out there, but if I was going to give one piece, because that's what you've asked
and
me.
And make it
I
nice
would
and
say,
detailed. We've got time. Make it nice and detailed. Yeah,
That's
because
fine.
I think, you know, it's really important.
I would say learn to be resilient, because you shouldn't, just because you don't get a pupillage the first time, or just because you're not back, you make your application and you don't get an interview to certain sets, or you maybe don't get a tenancy first time, there will be knockbacks along the way, probably in some way, shape or form. And I would stress that you should not look at any failures as failures. Don't turn them into positives. I'm a very positive person, but look at it as a learning experience. What have I learned from that? A lot of people who are in senior positions, who've applied for silk, who've applied to be judges, didn't get it the first time. But it doesn't stop them. A lot of the people who are successful, doesn't stop them keep going and going and going. So learn from those experiences.
Resilience. Have resilience. Learn from the experiences.
Exactly. And then, when you do get there, when you do get your pupillage or you get your tenancy, then you can look back and think, wow, I actually learned something about myself. I learned how to deal with that rejection, maybe. A lot of actors will say that, won't they? They go and do various castings. They don't necessarily get the job. You could just look up various famous politicians, presidents of America. You look all around the world.
Look at Joe Biden. His first attempt to become Prime Minister was so long ago. Isn't this his third or fourth attempt? I think. Something like that, isn't it?
It's really common.
And he's in his 70s now. And he's, just got the post. I mean, that's an inspirational point, although he's a man, but, we're not man haters here. But we're here to promote the females, but we're not man haters. But, yeah, I mean, he waited till he got to his 70s. He finally made it.
Exactly. So don't give up. And as I say, it's all about really being determined. And if you really think you can make it and you are determined and you work hard and you prepare for it, like you commented before, Hatti, then you'll get there in the end. There's lots of advice out there. Absorb it all and just be the best you can be.
Oh, absolutely. And I like that because there's a saying that always rings in my ears. Actually, I find myself repeating that to my 14-year-old more often than not. If you fail to prepare, then you prepare to fail. And I tell him
We're
that.
like peas in a pod, Hatti.
Well,
I said that to my son yesterday.
Did you? Rachel, I tell you, I'm saying it to him for breakfast, lunch and dinner. Because usually it's, I didn't do my homework. Oh, I forgot to do it. Oh, I haven't handed it in. And I have to say, my son has become, he could write a book on excuses because of the pandemic. Because this homeschooling business has been rather challenging and I could totally get it there from you. Rachel, thank you so much. It's been so great to have you.
Thank you for having me, Hatti.
And I will look forward to speaking to you soon. Have a lovely day.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
So my last guest is another great barrister who's dedicated to her cause. It's Emma Waldron from THREE Paper Buildings Chambers in London. Emma specialises in education law. She is recognised as a leading individual in her field and she is listed in Chambers of Partners and in the Legal 500. Emma, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me, and what a great episode this is going to be.
Well, it is, and I was saying, and I said to everybody on the email, it's the first one that we're doing where we're having different speakers all come in to one episode, and I'm so pleased to be doing it for International Women's Day. Such a key day that's supported around the world and celebrated around the world, all for the great achievements and recognition of brilliant women like yourself. So,
thank you very much.
Emma, tell us, why did you want to become a barrister?
Well, I suppose the first thing your listeners should know about me and my background is that I am the first lawyer in the family. There's nobody else in my family who even thought about entering into the legal profession. So I think when I told my parents when I was 16 that was the career that I wanted, I think they were slightly taken aback, but have been incredibly supportive, and I wouldn't be here.
They must be so proud of you, Emma.
Yeah, it's been fantastic, and they are just two wonderful people. And I think the reason that I wanted to become a barrister when I was 16, I mean, part of me would like to say, well, the answer was because I watched too much Judge John Deed when I was growing up, but that
for me it was answer. Judge Judy, but there you go, I get the place. Yeah.
I think both my parents always instilled in me a really, really strong sense of justice, and that was the driving force behind my decision to become a barrister. My mother is a teacher for children with disabilities, and it's perhaps not a surprise that I've ended up going into a field of law which is supporting similar people, so people who are vulnerable, who are maybe disabled themselves or have children who are disabled. So the area of law chose me, but the reason that I wanted to become a barrister was predominantly because I wanted to give a voice to those people in society that didn't have one.
Oh, wow.
And it's a privilege. It's a real privilege to do that job.
I mean, it's just so lovely to hear, it's from the heart and it's sincere reasons. I mean, when you think the public, really, we have quite a smokescreen between us and the bar and barristers. It's all a bit sort of don't really know much about it, and people, I think there definitely is this image that barristers are just stuck up people from really wealthy backgrounds where they've got into the profession because mum and dad have been barristers and that's what the bloodline does, when actually no, ordinary people who have a passion to help others, like you, find their ways into the bar, into the legal system at this kind of level, and helping people that you are passionate about helping. It's just amazing. So let's talk about your biggest challenge that you've faced along the way. What has that been for you, Emma?
My own self-doubt.
Woo! Okay. I say wow, by the way, because I know you, and I know you're a brilliantly confident person that is so good at your job. You deliver high quality work, and you're passionate about that. So tell me about that.
I think a lot of barristers, and I have to say particularly women, suffer from what we call imposter syndrome. We think that we shouldn't be here. We think that we're not good enough. And those negative thoughts, I think, can really, really hold you back, and probably have held me back at various stages in my career, because it stopped me from applying for perhaps secondments or interesting government positions that perhaps I could have applied for and could have got. And I think it's only been in the last kind of few years that I've settled into this job in a way that I feel confident about what I'm doing and confident about the service that I deliver to my clients. So yeah, biggest challenge for me, I'm afraid to say, has been something that I've imposed on myself, but I'm certainly working at getting rid of that feeling of being an imposter.
You are certainly not an imposter at the bar. You belong there 100%. I can tell you that. So let's talk about your biggest achievement today, Emma. Let's delve into that.
Okay, so I think for me, I take immense joy out of perhaps the smaller parts of this job. So it could be as simple as getting a thank you card from a client, a photograph of a parent's son or daughter in their new school uniform, knowing that I was instrumental in getting them to that school. So I count those as milestones, as big achievements, because they impact the lives of your clients so massively. So every week I'm kind of humbled by the work that I'm doing. But I think in terms of significant milestones, for me, it was probably getting into Legal 500 and Chambers and Partners.
That's massive.
Last year and the
massive.
year before. It's a very isolating job, this, and very few people actually tell you when you're doing a good job. You're self-employed, you're independent, and it's hard to know how well you're doing. So actually being recognised in these directories for me was a milestone. It was a marker that I'm doing the right thing. And heading in the direction I want to. So.
Well, listen, Get Legally Speaking keeps coming back to you for more and more and more. And if that's not one indication that you're good at your job, then, I'll struggle to find more. But no, I get it. I get the place. Let's talk about gender equality in the legal profession. If you could change one thing to accelerate gender equality in the legal profession, what would that be?
I bet you've had some really interesting answers to that question so far, and I suspect that none will be the same. But for me, I find that actually the judges that give you the toughest rides, the majority of the time, are women. And they're women who were perhaps practicing as barristers in the 70s, 80s, 90s. And I think there's this attitude amongst some members of the judiciary, female members, that, well, because they had a difficult ride, it's going to be difficult for you as well.
That's an interesting perspective.
Yeah. So I think if I were to accelerate one thing in terms of gender equality, it would be, I think those particular judges showing a bit more humanity and humility, and that would be the thing that I would like to see be done differently. And the only way that can really happen, I think, is if more people, more women, particularly at the junior end, apply for these positions and become judges themselves.
And it's getting past that sort of, if people choose to have families, then after you've had your family, can you get back into the profession? Are you going to put a pause on your profession? Or are you only going to take a maternity leave? Do you have the support to stay in the profession? Because, it's a hard gig. It's a hard slog. I just said to our last speaker, Rachel, barristers just can't turn up and wing it. You've got to do your homework. You can't just turn up to court and think, don't worry, I think I've got this one, without having done your homework, read your papers, and things like that. So it's about women being retained in the profession, isn't it? So that they can then go on to become the judges and the QCs.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that might be through the Inns of Court offering, say, creche schemes and nurseries and things like that.
Yes.
Absolutely. Need to see more of that.
Rachel, I hope that by the time... I just called you Rachel, Emma. There you go. There's me.
That's all right.
40 minutes in. This is why I only record for 20 to 25 minutes. We're 47 minutes in and I'm now calling everybody's name. Perfect. Emma, I hope that by the time you start your family, if that's what you choose to do one day, that there's plenty of child support around to assist you, because it's something that I think that this profession in particular really, really needs in order to keep women in the profession and give them the support required. Okay, so what would your one piece of advice be to young women looking to study and become a barrister?
Don't let anyone tell you that you're not good enough. And when you have that voice of self-doubt, that criticism in your head saying, I can't do this, I'm not good enough, don't listen to that voice. Surround yourself with positive role models. Surround yourselves with women that want to champion you, because believe me, there are so many women barristers that want to support other women and other people in this profession. The Association of Women's Barristers is a fantastic organisation and gave me a heck of a lot of support when I was starting out. So look into that. But the Inns of Court also all offer mentoring schemes. And it is so brilliant to have a good mentor, whatever stage you're at in your profession and in your career, but to have somebody that you look up to, that you can work with, and that will give you that voice of encouragement when you're self-doubting is so invaluable. So don't listen to anyone that says you can't. Surround yourself with people that say, yes, you can, you've got this.
Emma, that is so special. That is really, really so special, because I have to say again that, you know, young women who don't come from a background like me and you, I am the first person in the generation of both my mum's side and my dad's side to go into the legal profession, and I'm a non-practicing legal expert, whatever that means in the world of law, but there you go. The SRA doesn't really know what to do with me sometimes, but hey ho. You know, it is daunting, you know, to sit there and think, well, no one in my family's ever done it, and it can be, you know, it's going to be potentially expensive, it's going to be hard work, but to hear from a barrister who has got years of experience behind them, who is, for me, one of the best in the business, saying go for it, believe in yourself, let's support each other as women at the bar, and let's support younger women coming into the profession, is just a gem.
Thank you.
Emma, thank you so much for joining me today for this special episode. It's been a delight to have you.
It's been wonderful to be here. Thank you so much.
Good. And what I'll say to our listeners is don't forget to click and subscribe to our podcasts, and you can find us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn and YouTube by searching Get Legally Speaking. Also visit our website at getlegallyspeaking.com. Thank you for listening.